Okay, so we're actually just pulling out of the parking lot where Hippie Singh Mani has his new gym. He just moved, I don't know, 300 feet.
Not far.
From his other gym in Bangkok. And we were filming for the Muay Thai Library. It was a pretty incredible session. We're not going to go way into it. You're also going to hear interruptions from our Google Map lady.
Yes.
Because we're heading from Bangkok.
Well, this is actually our second library session of the day.
You want to jump in on that?
Yeah, so we just trained with Hippie, which was incredible, but a couple of hours before that we trained with Wang Shanoi, which is fucking incredible. So usually we're doing Muay Thai Bones on our way back from fights, and this is completely different because we're on our way back from 2 library sessions.
Yeah, and arguably, there were no better fighters than these 2 fighters at their weights. Like, Hippie might have been the best small fighter in the history of Thailand. And Wang Shanoi
amazing.
Has an argument for being the best fighter ever at his weight.
Yes.
He is a monster.
And he was Fighter of the Year in '93.
Totally.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy. We're going to get to the podcast and the topics that we like to like dive into a
so
deep.
This incredible thing is happening, but we'll talk about it.
About it later. But just real quickly, how was that for you? I know Wang Shanoi is somebody that's been asked. People have been asking for him in the library forever, and he's kind of a like aura hero for you. That was a big sigh. Wow.
Can you ask that again?
What was it like?
Training with Wang Shanoi?
Yeah, and then you like train with Wang Shanoi, and then we just drive over 45 minutes.
I got distracted because there's a store called Keto Society that we're driving by. That's why I got distracted. Okay, so
300 meters. Turn right.
We train with absolutely incredible fighters who I fangirl out about. I love Golden Age fighters. Many of them.
But totally.
Something about Wang Shanoi, and I think it's how scary he was and how like fearful he made other fighters of him. Like people did not want to fight Wang Shanoi.
Like he made legends look afraid and uneasy.
People have badass Chaya nicknames. Like they have really cool aliases, you know, like Mr. Merciless Knee. All this stuff is very cool.
Death Mask.
Death Mask is pretty fucking cool. He has a couple of nicknames, one of which is 33-second fist, because he knocked out Nam Kabuen in 33 seconds. It's one thing to have like, oh wow, look at this 6-second knockout, the fastest in history. It's like, yeah, but who are you knocking out? He knocked out Nam Kabuen. Who
also could be one of the...
He was going to be Fighter of the Year that year until he got knocked out.
And Nam Kabuen told you that.
Yeah.
So, but he basically took Nam Kaboon's Fighter of the Year away.
I'll take that.
With a fucking 33-second.
Which he doesn't even
and
seem
Nam
that
Kaboon was
himself.
Nam Kaboon himself was as good a fighter of the Golden Age that ever was.
So I was a little bit nervous to train with Wang Shanoi, even though I really, really, really have wanted to get him in the library for a really long time. My nervousness was not a like, I hope I don't mess up. It was honestly just a like starstruck. I'm going to be standing in front of Wang Shanoi. And then he was really sweet.
Totally. You thought you were like visiting the devil.
But what's cool about it is that like you can be like intimidated by a vampire or something, but then when they bite you, you become a vampire.
Okay.
So like him showing me Wang Shanoi-ness, and it felt good.
Yeah.
Was like, oh, that's why you're so scary, is because I want that. Like I want the.
Yeah, the things you're attracted to are parts that speak to you.
Yeah.
Right. So that was very cool. And then you just throw in.
And then we'll just go train with Hippie, who's like tiny and when he turns on his thing, he's very scary as well. But like, his scariness is not aggressive. I'm like how Lock Hin is scary, where you're like, please just don't stand that close to me. Hippie's not scary like that, but when he goes into his like masculine, like, yeah, I'll fucking take your shot and give you one back. Yeah. It's like how Lock Hin experienced Samson, where he knocked Samson down after losing to him twice, and then Samson got up and it's like, he's not going to stay down. There's nothing you can do to Hippie to make him stop, which is why he's kind of amazing.
And this is one of the most beautiful things about the library is they're not like highlight reel demos of perfect technique, but part of what's cool is we try to capture the actual energy of the fighter. You standing in front of him, you get the blessing of actually feeling the energy of like being in the cage. Is this a full right?
Yeah.
But in the Muay Thai library, you can see it, and it's a very important component of their style and their technique.
Yeah.
It's the component that if then if you tried to explain to someone Meng Wang Chanoi's techniques, you could probably explain them and show them, but they wouldn't feel his energy.
There's something about Diesel Noi too, which is like, people can watch Diesel Noi and be fans of Diesel Noi and still have this like, well, he was just tall. And you're like, if you've ever fucking stood in front of Diesel Noi, it's really not his height that you notice. Like, his larger than lifeness, he could be Hippie's size, and you'd still be like, holy shit.
Totally.
That thing is scary.
It was like that tiger was scary because it was 12 feet long.
Because it had stripes. You're like, yeah, I guess.
Okay, so that's what we're coming off of. For those that love Muay Thai Bones podcast, we're sorry that we haven't been podcasting. Our lives have kind of gone topsy-turvy. The Muay Thai Bones podcast was designed to really come out of our lifestyle, which was Sylvie driving all over the country. We would drive, 10 hours at a time.
In each direction.
And we'd be like, we're locked in the car, and we have these great conversations about like the philosophy of Muay Thai, really. And we're like, we should just share this with people. And so that's what the nature of the podcast is. And one, there's no fights right now for you. You don't want to fight on the entertainment Muay Thai shows. So we're kind of waiting for fight opportunities to pick up because of COVID. And so for that reason, the whole Muay Thai Bones plan,
the structure fell out.
The structure fell out. We did a few from the house and the apartment, and we'll probably do more of that. But also, you left Patron Rung Gym. That is something we'll talk about in a future podcast, but it was a real like destabilizing effect on your daily life, and all of it hasn't settled down.
Yeah.
Do I go?
Turn right up here. You're in a left turn lane right now.
No.
Just get behind this cube.
Yeah. So that's to explain why there's not been a lot of Muay Thai Bones. But here we have a nice 2.5 hour drive. Do I go right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
From Bangkok to Pattaya, and we hope to like return to talking about deep issues about Muay Thai.
Yeah.
So the first topic, do you want me to jump in or you want to do it?
You do it.
First topic, I actually wrote the topic down. Like, I write these down as they come to us throughout our lives. I just jump on a spreadsheet. The first one I wrote down maybe 2 months ago, maybe a month and a half ago. But when COVID hit, we don't want to make this too much about COVID, but when COVID hit Thailand, one of the things that Thailand did, the Sport Authority, initially when they reopened fights, they had very strong restrictions about who could attend and how many.
Only, no audience.
Yeah.
You have to wear a mask while you're doing your Ram Muay for show. Like it's.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but also there's a reason why they were very strict, which was there was a Muay Thai stadium outbreak. Mm-hmm. What are they? A cluster.
A cluster that came from a Lumpini event.
Yeah, one of maybe the only big cluster that hit the news was around a Lumpini event and a Raja event, actually, wasn't it?
Well, we don't
have to be technical about it.
They blame the Lumpini one.
Yeah, but that person had gone to both stadiums
within a time frame.
Yeah. So they were pretty strict about what was happening, and one of the bizarro things they did was they eliminated clinch. So it was basically turning Muay Thai into kickboxing with elbows, and it was a really stark, weird thing to be watching stadium Muay Thai and no clinch.
Well, okay. Yes, it is effectively no clinch, but they were breaking it after 2 knees, like fast clinch breaks, not
Sylvie,
like
one
no
knee.
clinching.
We heard 1 knee even as a rule. But we
But-
don't have to debate about the technicalities.
Yeah.
The reality was when you watched Muay Thai, it was no clinch.
Yeah.
I
And
mean-
it was hard to watch.
It was very hard to watch. But this is what was interesting to me, was this is one of my great fears about Thailand's Muay Thai, that it's going to eventually be swallowed up by these kickboxing, kind of aggro, westernized style of fighting, which is really not Thailand's Muay Thai.
No.
And all of these entertainment shows, Max, Super Champ, One Championship,
Hardcore.
Hardcore,
MX,
they
yeah.
remove clinching.
Yep.
And honestly,
They remove a lot.
okay,
A lot by their scoring. But yes.
we're talking
very
about
much
clinching though, right? And
You're
one
just
of
wiggling.
one of the okay, you jump in there, baby. I lost my track.
Well, there was already a theme that had started with these shows, which are actually quite popular because they're televised, of entertainment, kind of like not really the scoring of traditional Muay Thai, not the aesthetic of traditional Muay Thai, just this kind of like plowing forward thing that also got rid of clinch. It was happening, but it was like just kind of a trend. But then because of COVID and what they call new normal, in an effort to show that they were containing or making alterations to contain the virus, they went towards this thing that was a trend in a sidebar in stadium Muay Thai.
Yeah,
which was horrifying.
It was horrifying because your feeling was, okay, so you guys know, entertainment Muay Thai technically, legally, is not Muay Thai. It's not governed by the same, as far as I understand it, it's not governed by the Sport Authority of Thailand. It's classified as an entertainment form instead of a sport form.
Yeah, they have different sanctions.
So they have
rules.
different rules. They favor aggression and chon clashing. If you fight backwards, you'll kind of lose very often. And so it's a I don't know, a bastardized version of Muay Thai, but it's on the side. It's meant to be a televised show that appeals to people that really don't even know Muay Thai, younger crowds.
They also actually specify that it's for an international audience, so it's what they think global viewers will want to see.
Well, they actually know what they're talking about
Yeah.
because it's actually very popular.
Yeah.
And there are some people who argue,
You have to, sorry, when you get to the street, you have to go left, and then you have to more or less do a U-turn into this little...
but not right
Do you
away.
see the shape of it? It's pretty fast. It's like 100 meters.
Really?
150 meters.
Okay, can you actually make that bigger?
Yeah.
So I can see that. We're doing a map thing. 1 second, I'm looking at the map. Where's the U-turn, baby? I don't see it.
It's, look at this, you're turning right,
Okay,
but it's kind of like a U-turn.
All right, got you. The arguments, we've talked about the entertainment Muay Thai trend in the past and how we fear that it threatens authentic Muay Thai, really. But people who support the growth of entertainment Muay Thai will often say Muay Thai needs to find new audience, a younger audience, a more casual audience. And there are arguments that these shows kind of grow Muay Thai by appealing to people who are not a hardcore Muay Thai fan.
Right.
And it's less skilled, less technical, or sometimes they get older, big names
Like
on the
retired.
almost retired,
Yeah.
but big names, skilled people.
Yeah.
But it's like it's a changing of the sport. So I guess what we're talking about though here is, for me, and it sounds like you too, baby, it was horrifying. One was thinking, oh, these entertainment shows, they'll never really impact stadium Muay Thai, which has a deep tradition, is governed by the Sport Authority. Like, if you take clinch out of these shows, real Muay Thai will still continue. And then suddenly, we saw, what am I doing?
guess
I
you're
missed
supposed
it?
to turn right there, but it doesn't exist, so
Okay.
it'll make an adjustment in a second. Okay, yeah, go up 1 kilometer and do like a proper right with
Okay.
probably a light.
Suddenly, real Muay Thai, the sport authority, actually removed clinch for reasons of COVID.
Right.
And the thing that we're like, oh, well, this will never happen, suddenly happened.
Yeah.
So now suddenly, not only were entertainment shows had taken out clinch already, but stadium Muay Thai had taken out clinch. And so suddenly there was no Muay Thai, like actual Muay Thai, going on in Thailand, anywhere. Now, the feeling was, oh, this is just COVID, it'll last a couple of weeks or a couple of months.
I complained about this to several people when I talked to Crew Diesel, who is the head of FA Group, and it is a Muay Khao gym. He was like, this is the end of Muay Khao. Like, he was very...
He had doomsday.
He was like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
When I talked to Diesel Noi about it, who is the king of Muay Thai, he was like, don't worry about it. Once they let gamblers in again, they'll complain, and there's no way it'll stay this way. Like, he was like, this will go away.
Right. But what was alarming to me is at the time, you were still filming for the Muay Thai Library. So we were going to film in gyms of Bangkok, and people were already training you for the clinchless Muay Thai.
Yes.
Like, even Ajahn Sarat, who's an old school Ajahn, and teaches Muay Khao, basically, a very aggressive, like, clinch-friendly Muay Thai. He was like, no more, new normal. He was trying to get you to push off in the clinch. I was shocked how quickly, and then Yo Kumpan was like, new normal, no more clinching.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not training for a fight. They literally were changing the Muay Thai that their gym was
which is
doing.
Indicative of how Muay Thai is a living sport,
Yes.
which is you have to make adjustments for how it's scored because you want to win. What was amazing is how
fast, like instantaneously.
Yeah.
Now, so for me, the topic here is, we take the transmission of knowledge and of skills for granted.
Yes.
We're like, this is embedded in the culture. The Muay Thai of the golden age, even though it no longer really taught, it's present in a new form. But it made us aware that things could change really fast. Like, if COVID swept over Thailand, and Thailand actually has had a really good, more than lucky, I mean, they were lucky to a degree, but they also took very strong action. If it had swept over Thailand, and if it was, let's say, more virulent than it is, you could completely imagine to have clinch removed from Muay Thai.
Yeah.
Like, for 2 years.
Yeah, and when something lasts for a while like that, like if the new normal situation was like a year and a half, 2 years,
Yeah.
Muay Thai would not go back to the way it was. There's a thing about the plasticity and the elasticity, is that Muay Thai is plastic, it will change, but the elasticity of it going back after it's changed is time sensitive. Like, it will not rubber band back to the way it was if it's been stretched for a while. It will just be plastic and change.
And even if it does bend back, much can be lost in the time frame. Like, if you no longer can clinch and your gym stops training clinch, then clinch itself becomes... It degrades.
And clinch degrades really fast, so like...
What do you mean by that?
Well, we've seen this with like, in 150 meters, go right, but this is a U-turn. We've seen this with fighters who
I think this is a turn lane, baby.
Okay. You think that's the light in 100 meters, right there?
Yeah, I think that's a through lane. I think that guy's doing something illegal.
Okay. We've seen this with fighters who clearly have like not been clinching
like
for
good,
6 months.
like good fighters or something.
Nong Bu was like an incredible clinch fighter when she was younger. She fought Becca Irwin, got her nose broken, took like 6 months off for that recovery, and then kind of slowed down in her fighting after that. Clearly did not do a lot of clinching in that time. She's not a clincher anymore. Like, her clinch has completely degraded.
Yeah.
It's not like learning to ride a bike where you'll just get back to it. We just watched Pet Jaw fight, and we don't know how her clinch would have gone.
Yeah, but not just using female examples. I think that it degrades male fighters. I think clinch secretly is a skill. It doesn't degrade completely. Like, you still have balance and such, but you lose feeling for it, and the higher order of the skill set erodes.
Yes.
Right? Your turns, your timing.
Yeah.
Right?
You have to stay alive in it. Like, you have to be doing it all the time. It's interesting because it's a skill, but it's kind of like cardio, where like you will lose it pretty fast. You take a week off of running, it's not like your cardio's gone, but it's going to take you 2 weeks to come back to where you were, let alone improve. So all of this is a big circuitous thing for me, which is, I was like, holy fuck, clinch, Muay Khao fighting might actually disappear from Thailand. Like, before it was inconceivable that it would disappear, because stadium Muay Thai would always anchor it, at least for the next 5-10 years. And I'm like, holy fuck, it can just totally drop out in an instant. And it's a very big there's a good reason for it. I mean, it's a pandemic, although not clinching actually doesn't make that much sense. It was more of a face-saving symbolic gesture that they made. And now that we're talking right now, clinch has returned fully to stadium Muay Thai. Which I believe is what Pidoi said, which is what Diesel Muay said, is because they let the gamblers back in. I also think it's that, and we were watching this when it was still new normal, and there were differences between stadia, and even within a single stadium between the referees with how old they were, with how long they'd let the clinch go. Like, the older referees were kind of like, one, they have this hierarchical status where they're like, you're not gonna fucking tell me what to do. I know what
Muay Thai is.
I know how to referee Muay Thai.
Totally.
And then two, they just kind of did what they know, which is like, no, you let the clinch go. Like, that's how this works, kind of thing. So it's come back.
Okay, but if there's a second wave of COVID,
who knows?
which you think is going to happen once they open up for tourism and you let the Westerners in, or anyone in, it's probably going to have a second wave. If there is a huge second wave and there are Muay Thai clusters, you can imagine clinch being removed again, maybe for 6 months. But okay, I'm still trying to get to my point, which was when I saw that clinch could actually be removed from Thailand and maybe removed for a year or two and suffer irreparable kind of change, I'm like, holy fuck, the Muay Thai Library may be all that's left of Muay Khao technique.
Yeah, it's like an endangered species.
Like an endangered species, like it's in the vault. Yeah, you can see Muay Khao technique in actual fights on YouTube from Muay Khao fighters of the Golden Age. Yes, but that's not very revelatory. You could see how they fought, but actually the components of the technical aspects of Muay Khao fighting, it's pretty sophisticated. Matter of fact, what did Wang Chinoy say today? He said Muay Khao fighters, or Dern fighters, are actually very... He
said people think Dern fighters are stupid because they're just coming forward all the time. And he's like, they're actually way more thoughtful in IQ than a femur fighter who has to go backwards, because you have to figure out how to keep...
Well, you provoke the counters, I mean the attacks, and then you're second attacking. You're basically a kind of counter fighting, even though you're advancing. But I'm like, we've got over 100 hours archived,
but
it's like, oh my god, thank God.
Yeah, but it's also this tiny little microcosm of what we've been trying to figure out with the Muay Thai Library, which is like, why have the techniques from the Golden Age changed so much and disappeared?
Right.
Like, Muay Khao from the Golden Age is not the same as Muay Khao now at all.
Right.
Even though Muay Khao still exists now. And we're like, why did this change so much? We see that within a week of them making this announcement about new normal, gyms are all changing the way they train.
Totally.
Like, nobody fucking trains golden age technique anymore.
Yeah, because am I going right or?
You stay straight.
Wait, this looks a little confusing.
You don't want to take the U-turn. You want to go straight.
Do I go up that ramp?
You go up the ramp and then it's going to do a loop.
But baby, I go where I'm like up this ramp over here?
I think you go up the ramp. Yes. Go up the ramp.
100 meters.
Okay.
Continue straight.
And then
Go.
stay left.
Does that look right?
Yeah, keep going straight.
Does it say Tarama 9 or anything?
Continue straight.
Keep going straight.
We're figuring out a map area.
You're going to turn left where it...
Turn left.
Do I go there?
Yes, yes, yes.
Boy.
That was fast. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. When you're driving in Bangkok, just so you guys know, because not a lot of people have had experience in it, and Google Maps is a godsend. We couldn't have done the Muay Thai Library without Google Maps, because you basically get really detailed directions pretty much anywhere in Thailand. But for some reason in Bangkok,
I think it's all the overpasses.
There's so many overpasses and turns, and then the coverage doesn't seem
Consistent. Or
consistent.
timely.
It's kind of weird. If you just miss one ramp,
You're like 40 minutes.
yeah, you could
out
be
of the
40
way.
minutes delayed. Like, it's crazy. So am I on the right thing, baby?
Yes.
Okay. So we made the ramp.
Yeah.
So you were saying, I was saying about how Golden Age fighting is no longer trained. It's because the scoring changed. We've talked about it in the past. We're not going to get into it too heavily here, but like, for instance, certain trips became legal that used to be illegal.
Mm-hmm.
So how you need had to change.
Yeah.
Because suddenly you could be foot swept,
Mm-hmm.
which you couldn't be foot swept before,
Yeah.
which made you more conservative in how you need, which meant more locking from clinch fighters,
Right, Nam
which led to
Kabun.
more static.
Nam Kabun was a very dominant body lock, body throw, like,
And open space knee
aggressive
fighter too. Yeah.
He's just outright said to me, he's like, if those foot sweeps were allowed back in my day, I wouldn't have been able to be who I was.
Yeah, and he was one of the most exciting, dynamic Golden Age fighters. And he's like, I couldn't fight that way now.
Yeah.
And when we've brought Golden Age legends into Patron Gym, everybody was very happy to have it, and many of the techniques were beautiful and welcomed, but other ones where they're like, you can't fight like that now anymore.
Or that doesn't score
That doesn't score.
Yeah.
Like, and so people train to the score, to
Yeah.
win. And actually there was it was a little bit of a nasty comment, but still an interesting and intelligent comment made on Samart's page or somewhere. And basically this is when Samart was really complaining that Golden Age, but Golden Age techniques are no longer rewarded. That the gamblers have changed Muay Thai, blah, blah, blah. And someone was like, you run a gym, you better start teaching your fighters to fight for what? Scores.
Yeah.
Like, if Golden Age techniques don't score anymore, you have a responsibility in training Thais. Speaking of, where do I go? Straight?
Yeah.
You have a responsibility to change what techniques you're teaching.
Yeah, it's like,
which is kind of
it's
interesting.
Like if your town changes the rule that you can turn right on a red, so you can't turn right on a red anymore.
Is it still rolling?
Yeah. You don't get to.
It's frozen.
No, it's still going. This freezes when the time goes.
Oh, okay. What are you saying about the town? Sorry, God.
If your town changes the law from you can turn right on a red to you can't turn right on a red, don't be pissed if you get a fucking ticket for turning right on a red. Like,
Totally.
they changed the rules. You can't be like, the police changed the whatever. Like, yes, they did. You can be mad they changed it, but you have to now abide by
Right.
what has changed, which is a bummer because you don't always agree. I don't like them taking clinch out. I don't like that.
It's very dangerous, honestly. Like, it's dangerous to the long-term value and worth of Muay Thai. I understand why these shows are doing it, to inject an imagined excitement. Also to make it easier for Westerners to win.
This is something that I've said
know?
to at least Yod Kunpan, but maybe other people as well, which is that it's the idea in these entertainment shows of taking clinch out or you have to go forward or whatever is for entertainment. It's to make it more exciting. It's whatever. People's femur striking isn't actually so much better without the clinch. Like, you've taken something out, but nobody's an amazing striker to make up for the lack of
it's not
clinch.
like you suddenly have like kung fu movie level cinematic striking.
When you have to cut weight and you just take salt out of everything, it doesn't taste better without the salt. It's like the salt is missing. You know, like it changes
That's
the
a weird
flavor.
analogy.
It's,
but I
you're not
see
like,
what you
oh
mean.
wow, I can really taste the carrots now. It's like, no, there's
let's
something
go
missing.
into it for a second. I remember there was a very good interview or article that was based on an interview with the promoter who created Max, and it literally was created to let Westerners win, or to give them a much better chance of winning. Like, at the time, Thai Fight was this big ideological show, which is basically designed to...
Still like that.
Okay, but at the time it was the dominant television sport.
Right, yeah.
Like, it wasn't actually real competitive Muay Thai.
Right.
They would bring in Westerners to be kind of humiliated by some of the best Thai fighters who were then on the retirement circuit.
Yeah.
Like, Sanchai's still doing it. And yeah, Thai Fight is still doing it, but at the time that Max came, Thai Fight was the gold standard.
Yes, they were competing with them a little bit.
And so Max was designed as the anti-Thai Fight. Whereas Thai Fight was like, let's beat up some Westerners. The other one was, let's let Westerners beat up Thais.
Mm-hmm.
And it's evolved over time, but it was originally designed, and in those early Pattaya Stadium shows, Westerners would have huge weight advantages. Thais were told they can't ever go backwards, they will lose.
They would get decisions that you were like, huh.
Yeah,
I remember.
the decisions were really iffy. But it was a marketing choice.
Yeah.
But I'm saying the taking out of clinch was part of that. It wasn't just to make it more exciting. It was also to limit the skill levels so that Westerners could compete more easily, because Westerners generally are not
on par.
On par, yeah. So back to my thing, which just freaks me out, is that the Muay Thai Library, like when you were a little whippersnapper fighter 10 years ago, and we lived like in the mountains, in the countryside,
in America,
north of a couple hours out of New York City. Wait a second, this traffic's kind of crazy.
Just go straight.
I remember, and we were starved for technique. Like, you finally got to Master K. Keep an eye on the battery there, because the battery wasn't 100%.
I don't have a battery icon.
Oh.
It's okay.
It's okay?
Yeah.
We finally got to Master K, was teaching authentic Muay Thai technique, but older. Like, he was a fighter from the 60s and 70s. And we were so thirsty for it. There was almost no authentic, like, real Thai technique available online.
Yeah.
Like, I remember we were modeling your round kick after a Boss Rutan video. Well, a good kickboxer, but it's not Thai technique.
Yeah.
Like, there was almost nothing at the time. There was a Malapet video out a little bit. There was a Muay Thai clinch video done by Greg Nelson, who's not Thai.
Yeah, and we would watch a lot of Muay Khao, but he was fighting in Japan.
No, but there were fights you could watch, but the actual technique, like an hour learning the inside outs of a Thai technique, it didn't even exist on the internet.
No.
And so now that the Muay Thai Library has like over 100 hours documented, like, this is the fucking Library of Alexander. And then to have clinch and Muay Khao techniques suddenly be threatened as could go extinct. And already they've eroded over time because of rule changes and changes in the sport. I'm like, thank God we have 4 videos of Diesel Noi. thank God we have how long so on knees the fuck out of a bag.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, it's like a treasure.
Yeah.
Like, and even more of a treasure. I don't know, you seem much less moved by this. I'm shocked actually that you're like, yeah, we know that stuff's there.
I don't think that this change struck me with the sense of urgency that it has you. Like, other things have done that to me, like Siri Khan dying right after we did that interview with him totally filled me with this, like, there's a sense of urgency to getting these guys in the library. Even the stuff that Wang Chinoy and Hippie were showing me today is like, you're not going to learn that in any other gym. Not because people don't know.
Yeah.
But because they don't teach it. Because it's like, just do this. Like, to me, there's a beauty and an honesty to the, like, Cruden, just do a right cross and a left kick. Like, if you're good at those two things, you can be a very simple fighter and win lots of fights with just those techniques.
Right.
There's an honesty to that I think is kind of cool, and it, like, works with lots of kind of, like, middle level gyms. But it is still sad that, like, this kind of vocabulary of technique, that if you have a broad exposure to different techniques and different ideas and different approaches, that's how you get, like, you throw so many things at the wall and see what sticks kind of thing. What Wang Chinoy was showing me with, like, the way he steps, lots of people have told me to step on every strike. The way he eats space, he made that out of his exposure to a gym space. Karahat made himself out of his exposure in his gym space. Like, how do I become a fucking shark?
But baby, it's Muay Khao. Like, it's not just, save a bunch of techniques. It's like there's a whole, it's like evolutionary branch suddenly almost got sawed off. And baby, I mean, I don't want to say Sylvie saved jazz, but when we first started talking about Muay Khao, we had discovered that there is such a thing as Muay Khao. Like, it's a complete fighting style, and it's caught in a dialectic with Muay Thai. Like, there's two camps, and one of them is Muay Khao. Okay, people are going to raise their hands. I always knew about Muay Khao 25 years ago. I got it. There are people who knew. The internet had never heard of Muay Khao.
No, and now people talk about it as though it's like a household term.
Like the most obvious thing in the world. Everybody knows Muay Khao. Yeah. People are like, I'm a Muay Khao fan, but nobody had ever heard of Muay Khao. Like what we've documented, what started with what you were doing in your documentation, is you've informed the entire framework on which people think about what is Muay Thai. Now people are like, Muay Thai, Muay Femur, Muay Khao. This is the dividing line of techniques. That conception didn't exist 10, 15 years ago in Western minds, and right when we discover Muay Khao, it almost got lost.
Yeah, that's...
Like, if 5 years from now you couldn't even see a Muay Khao fighter anywhere in the world because everything was fucking kickboxing and mashing, that would be very sad. It would be like, there once was Muay Khao. Can you imagine? It's totally possible.
I mean, there will be a version of that, too.
No, not if the rules are like no clinch.
Yeah.
There's no clinch in K1 fighting. I mean, even though technically 2 knees or whatever, but the sophistication of what clinch is very...
Yeah, Kevin and I have been watching a lot more Muay Thai. We moved. We didn't have a TV before. And where we moved now, there's a TV. And ironically, what we watch is not on TV. It's still on the internet, but we can watch it on a bigger screen.
Well, we mix both.
So we're watching a lot of contemporary Muay Thai. I will say that my excitement at a true Muay Khao fighter now, they're rare. Like, people talk about, like, oh, everyone's Muay Khao now and it's ruined because it's just gamblers believe in power and throwing and blah, blah, blah. Sure, there's a lot more, like, grabbing and throwing in the clinch now than there used to be. That's not true Muay Khao. We were watching some kid who, like, for the first 2 rounds, I was kind of like, this kid sucks.
I
like,
remember
he seems
that.
dumb or something. Like, I can't
What's
figure
wrong
out.
with him?
He, like, stood at a weird distance. we, from that fight, have figured out that when someone looks really uncomfortable in space for the first 2 rounds, we're like, he's Muay Khao, like it's coming.
Yeah, they told him not to go yet.
We were like, he's horrible, like why is he even on this show? And then round 3 hit.
Baby, I actually get a point for that.
You knew it was coming.
I guessed it. I'm like, that guy's got to be Muay Khao.
I'm like, this kid's dumb.
Because there's something, you can't be that uncomfortable unless you got some other mode.
I was like, why are they feeding this poor kid to this other fighter? And then in round 3 he started going and it was like, oh, that's what that does.
Totally.
It's like the frog went in the water and you're like, oh,
totally.
That's what those are for.
Totally.
But yeah, it's like that. Like people, Muay Khao in quotes is like way more common now. True Muay Khao is ultra rare and
feels that
amazing.
Way. Feels that way. And so, if you're listening to this, feed on the Muay Thai Library, the Muay Khao sessions. They are like, even now, you yourself should be digesting these techniques because they're still threatened.
Yeah.
They are not threatened to be completely outlawed, but they could be. And I'm like, you want to educate yourself about the history of this beautiful technique, this branch of Muay Thai that is full of IQ, strategy, tactics.
True fucking aggression rather than blind swimming aggression.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, let's stop there, right? That was a good one.
We're rolling. Although
It rains a lot in Bangkok. It's almost a joke. We're like
the Seattle of Thailand.
just the London, the pea soup. We're like, it's so crazy. It's sunny in Pattaya, and we're just like drive through a rain.
The second you hit Bangkok,
it's like a curtain of gray.
Yeah.
We don't want to like make Emma feel bad. But she's from England.
She's not from London. Your city sucks. No, there's just a lot of rain in Bangkok all the time.
And that's traffic. We should be on the highway soon though. All right, so topic number 2, baby.
My nose is cold from the aircon.
Want to turn it off? You want to turn off the aircon?
No, I just want it not quite. We turned it way up to cool the battery.
All right.
So I don't know how to introduce this topic, but
You want me to do it?
yeah, you do it.
Okay. So, for those that follow Sylvie's bio, the little story about how you found Muay Thai and it ended up consuming your life and da-da-da-da-da, it was, like if you had met Sylvie when she first started training Muay Thai at that little strip mall gym, what was it called, the Edge? Yeah. There is no... You would have to have been a very creative fiction writer to dream up that you are going to become like the historical Muay Thai journalist and the person that smashed all the fight volume records for Westerners. Like, smashed. The number of fights you've had in Thailand is double any other Westerner, and there have been some very badass Westerners. So it's kind of amazing. We were thinking about this the other day. Like, how does one make sense of when you've followed a passion this intensely and all the actions you've taken, you've become this kind of like incredible fighter, a historic level fighter. And it's like, when you were at that little strip mall, there was no way to even imagine that this was possible. Like if some like gypsy lady with a shaking hand like grabbed your sleeve and was like, "You'll be the fighter with the most," right? You would be like, "You are crazy." And so you are like a very quiet,
well, this is the thing,
shy.
Is that there's layers to this where like
totally
people who I grew up with, including my own family, the idea that Sylvie became a fighter, not a prolific fighter or anything, just a fighter
in any way,
point blank, it's like, how did that happen? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Whereas some people I grew up with are like, oh, that makes sense. But
okay, but you've blown through the topic now.
The layers of what I am being like, no one saw that coming. For me personally,
yeah,
I make my living talking.
like that's
videos,
even more surprising,
talking
right?
Publicly to a massive audience is like, what?
Well, okay, so let's slow this down and not like summarize the whole topic in 2 minutes. When we were talking about this the other day, we actually were asking ourselves, I was asking you, well, who literally in your life when you were a kid would have seen this coming? Or it's not surprising? Because this is really interesting, because it's like, what is the real you? Like, is this the real you? Or if you had gone on to become like a vegan activist, was that the real you? You got very like a weird look on your face. For those that are on the podcast only.
Well, the only person I could think of who was like saw the what's the word? Cohesion the entire time would be Nell. Like my best friend growing up, Nell.
When you were little.
I've known her since kindergarten. I hated her before we became friends. And then we became
a good
friends.
Sign.
I can distinctly remember the first day that led to our first play date, which is a word that only her mother would use. My family never used play dates. But I was in kindergarten and I hated her because she was friends with this boy that would harass me that I absolutely could not stand. I remember we had to say something about ourselves in class, and I said that I played violin, and innocently enough, the kindergarten teacher was like, oh, well, Nell plays violin too. And I remember turning around to glare at her from like, I was sitting
How
at the
dare you
front.
bite my style?
Oh, I was just like, we've got nothing in common. Best friends forever. Like we became inseparable for, I don't know, 12 years after that. But
so do you think it was by virtue of the fact she was your best friend, has been, that she was able to see this in you, this continuity between the girl you were, who was shy?
Well, you have to explain who the girl I was. I was very fucking shy.
I didn't know you back then.
I'm still very shy. The kindergarten.
You were very small.
This same kindergarten teacher called my mom at work and was like, Sylvie has crawled under the table and won't come out. And my mom was like, if you figure out how to get her out from under tables, let me know.
It's like a wild animal.
I'm out of ideas. I don't like attention. I don't like being the center of attention. I'm not aggressive. I'm not confrontational. I don't stand up for myself or others in a
bold way.
Other than a strongly written letter or something.
That you don't send.
Totally.
or fictitious dialogues that you've had, like you and Emma, to share with each other.
Are excellent at what we totally ripped into that person at Big C, but didn't actually say those words to anybody. My first boyfriend, who we were together for like 2.5 years or something, we wrote epic letters to each other. Like, the intensity of our relationship was letters.
Right.
I'm totally like this. Careful, baby.
Very verbal.
So to go from that to basically a public figure fighter.
Well, part of the reason why I want to talk about this is there are probably people who are considering becoming a fighter or considering training in Muay Thai, and maybe many people around them are like, that's not you.
Go left.
Like, why would you want to? You're not like that.
Well, this is the thing.
This is really interesting.
That we were kind of getting to with Nell seeing the cohesion, is that in the way Emma and I will divulge to each other what we didn't actually say to anybody but would have said to somebody, we're aggressive and razor-tongued as shit, even though we don't actually say it to anybody. Is that Nell saw that side of me as my best friend for so long. Nikki saw this too. Nikki was like my sister growing up. Like, the things that you say to your best friend of how mad someone made you, or what you wanted to say to someone, or how impassioned you are about veganism as a 6th grader or whatever. Like, they see those things, and that is consistent with qualities of a fighter, even if they're not literally hitting someone.
Let me ask you, like, so you yourself identify a thread of continuity, right? You're like, I can see the little fighter of Sylvie when I was 5, when I was 8, when I was 12, even though other people, I hid it from other people, maybe. I mean, would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think that there's just maybe even, I would go so far as to call it a misconception of fighters. That they're very like, some fighters are like this. They're very like, they stand up for themselves. They're very like, what'd you say to me? Like alpha kind of, there are fighters like that. I don't think they're the best fighters. I think there's also a quality to fighters that is like what I'm talking about, which is when you're the mouse and you don't want attention. Which was one of your nicknames. And you want to be invisible, but you're like fiery. Is that you endure a lot. Not in a like walk all over me way, but in a like, okay, you guys keep doing that, but I'm not fucking walking away. Like, I'll be pissed at the party for 2 hours instead of leaving or whatever. That's a kind of endurance.
Totally.
That's, I think, a quality of fighters that is consistent. And I've said, I think in blog posts writing about why I fight, or maybe even about like what is violence and things like this, is that becoming a fighter didn't change who I was, but it took certain qualities and really emphasized them, and took other qualities that were emphasized before and completely atrophied them. It didn't, it's like it shape shifted. It took the material I already was and like shuffled it around, but it's like I've not become anything that I wasn't before.
Well, it dialed in to aspects of yourself and out of other aspects of yourself, maybe.
Yeah.
In like, not to go too far, but in like genetics, you turn certain genes on, you turn other genes off.
Yeah.
But your genome has all of it.
Yeah.
So what do you... So in terms of continuity, do you feel in some way, instead of just being neutral, like, well, some things strengthened and some things weakened, do you think there's anything to the idea that this has been a journey so far of liberation? Like, it's not just like colors changed, but rather, you think there is some kind of, like, if you're a mousy person and you privately hold grudges, that's different than being able to express yourself and physically exert control over space. It's a different experience as a human being. Like, one is moving from a passive to a more active state.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that's the case.
I feel like a lot of the things that I struggled with as a very insecure, introverted person, I struggle with in my fighting as a, like, the kind of fighter I became being a Muay Khao fighter.
Right.
It's very like, get to the inside where you're basically like in the small space. I'm not a like, let's be in the arena, like a very like, totally, I'm not a like, let's stay at this distance where everyone can see the grand motions. I'm like, we get inside, the pain I'm causing is between you and me until you go down. And then it's like, now everyone knows about it kind of thing. Like, it's a very kind of intimate internal fight that I'm that kind of fighter.
But this is very interesting because, okay, we discovered, first of all, it was to broadly brush the painting. Everybody wanted you to be a quick little bounce around fighter because you're small and you're kind of fast, twitchy.
Little jet.
Yeah, and they're like, you gotta bounce around and do this, and you're like, I do not feel comfortable. Like, you're like being on stage in space where I can be humiliated.
And they're like, fake a lot, and I'm like, I'm way too honest.
Yeah, I don't feel like faking. And then so we discovered Muay Khao, and you're like, ooh, this is really a different way of fighting. This feels comfortable to me. I gravitate to this anyways. And like how you're describing this beautiful description of the private, intimate space between two fighters at close range. But some of the fighters that you just fucking adore are femur fighters and are very kind of like theatrical and I don't know.
Performative?
Performative, good word.
Like hippie.
Karahat,
Yeah.
the main one, but yeah. And I'm like, you recently have kind of realized that there are parts of femur. Do I go up that thing or no?
3.7, you bear right. I think you
So I
just
go straight. There are parts of femur that you are drawn to.
Yeah, they speak to me.
They speak to you like you want to do them in a fight.
Yeah.
Not like, oh, that would be cool, but you're actually drawn
Yeah, but
to
that's...
these aspects, which I'm just saying is not as simple as, oh, I'm a little introvert and so I only want to fight on the inside.
But this is
There's other parts of you.
This is the cohesion consistency too.
Yeah.
Is that you, when we first got together and you came home with me for Christmas and met my family and you got to see Sylvie among her brothers.
Right.
I am very sharp-tongued, playful, witty, like gregarious in a small group that I'm comfortable with. It's like once the door closes, I'm pretty outgoing. But when it's like out in the world, I'm like, no,
Quiet.
put me in my bubble kind of thing.
Right.
So there are elements of that femur performative, like playful thing that I'm like, in a comfortable space, I can do that. Like in my small group community, I can do that.
And so maybe as a fighter, because you're getting more and more comfortable, like growing eyes, more and more experience in the ring, more sparring now, you're feeling, hey, I can kind of let my hair down a little bit and attempt that trip.
Yeah.
Or strut after I fall, I've thrown you to the ground a little bit. Like these little things that also are you. Like it's layers. It's layers.
It's interesting to compare this to the like, you are who you are, and it just emphasizes some parts and quiets down other parts. It's like the like remix version of yourself with someone like,
I just hear record scratching.
Let's do the Phil Spector wall of sound version of Sylvie and see what that's like. But like, you'll see consistencies like Hippie is a very talkative, social, confident dude in life, and he's that in the ring, but like turned up.
Right.
Karahat is a very quiet, shy, like will stare at the girl across the room for fucking 4 hours and never talk to her. Like, but then when he walks in the ring, he's very confident.
Yeah,
like,
he's like
it's this other
like
part of his personality kind of thing, but that's not what he's like walking around. Like after he's showered, after training, and like goes along his way, he's very fucking quiet. First time we met him, with him like peering over his glasses at his phone, we're like, this guy was a fighter who beat
was a
just
was a fighter. You're like
crazy. And like Diesel Noise got the two sides. Like he's incredibly social and a little bit gregarious, but he's also super like humble, respectful little boy in a lot of ways. Like just kind of for a huge
and he's
dude,
also
he's like very
also quite sensitive and suffering.
Yeah.
He has a very kind of like sad suffering kind of dimension to him too.
But then someone who's pretty consistent, Nam Kabuan, like he's pretty confident out of the ring, very confident in the ring, but the way he's treated by everybody is the like little brother of the cool guy, so he's kind of always trying to prove himself all the time. Like there are consistencies and inconsistencies in everybody.
Well, what's the inconsistent? I don't understand the inconsistency. Are you just making that up?
No, I'm saying who Karahat is to me walking around is very inconsistent with how he fights. Wang Chinoi, I expected him to be way more consistent from how he fights and appears to like.
All right, but these are people
talks.
we actually don't even know. I'm more interested in you.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Because it feels
I
like
think that there
all
are
of
people
their
who know me well who
right.
are like, that's consistent because they know that element of my personality, and they're like, it just gets turned up to be a fighter. Whereas there are people who maybe they're like, the most salient personality trait of Sylvie is the mouse, like my mom,
right,
or my brother.
Oh, she had a very hard time. To this day, she doesn't even understand. Like she'll say she understands because she wants to understand. She tries to understand, but she is like, right? Am I unfair in that? I feel like she really can't really understand.
It is my understanding, or maybe how I've made peace with it, that my mom's problem with my fighting is actually nothing to do with who she thinks I am. It's her own problem with how she feels about violence.
Like, can't imagine herself doing it.
She gets a like visceral response, and she doesn't like feeling that. It's the same thing you've talked about how when you hate someone's pleasure, it's because you have to picture it.
Yeah, you have to embody
and you're
it for a
disgusted
second.
by it. You don't want to feel that.
Yeah.
Whereas it's the exact same thing that makes my mom not understand my fighting, makes my dad love my fighting, is that he's like, he feels it and he's like, I wish I
could
beat
do that.
people up.
Yeah.
Like, very proud that he doesn't have to like worry about his daughter being like
she can
taken
handle
advantage
herself.
of or something. Yeah, I don't know. But like, my daughter can shoot a pistol kind of thing. I don't know. But
from my perspective, I feel there's a road of liberation that is being acted. It's not simply that somebody turned the dials and this is just a different version, and there's a parallel universe. There's parallel universes with 1,000 different Sylvies where the dials got turned differently. I feel like my own feeling is, in choosing fighting, you chose an art form, a sport, but more an art form because you're drawn to the art of it, that embodies the hardest thing for you to have done from the person you were, the Sylvie Mouse, who had sharp-tongued, bitter, compression and shy, to expressing yourself, controlling the space physically when you like don't want to say anything, controlling the space physically, and eventually becoming more of a performer, like becoming comfortable. I feel like there's an arc of liberation that's going on, and that's why your progress is so difficult. It's difficult.
It's interesting that Nell is the one who I feel like sees the consistency the best, because I can't even remember what age it was. It was probably somewhere in middle school. She wanted to be, and has become, an activist, like all about justice. That's very consistent throughout
Totally.
who Nell is.
I'm going straight.
Yeah. I wanted to be a photographer. And she actually criticized me once.
You'll never forget this.
I'll never forget this.
I can tell from your tone of voice.
The same way she'll never forget me saying she wasn't funny one time. She was like, I can't believe you want to be on the sidelines. Like, a photographer just observes. And I was really offended, but now when I think about it, I'm like, totally, that's why I liked photography. It's because you can spy on people.
Sneak on the side.
And then, like, show how you see things. But I guess it was like a challenge to not changing the world or something.
Do I go to the right a little bit here, maybe?
Yeah, slightly. But here,
okay,
you're a very interesting person to ask about this, because when you met me, I was in total Sylvie Mouse stage. That's how you met me.
Okay.
That's the first image you had of me.
Right.
And then as you got to know me, you got to see like other elements of me, and you've actually pushed me towards the like, let's emphasize these parts of your character.
I pushed you to follow the stated desires that you had. Like, if you're like, I just want to be a little librarian somewhere, then it would have been like, okay.
Yeah, you say that, but I was never like, I want to be a fighter with 264 fights.
No, it never happened like that. It happened because you wanted to learn Muay Thai. We went to a strip mall which called it Muay Thai, but it wasn't Muay Thai. Then we went to Master K and it was Muay Thai, but you were like, I want to know Muay Thai. If I don't fight, then I'm just don't know it. And that path is the exact path that you're still on. Like, after 264 fights, is you're still trying to know Muay Thai so fluently that you can fucking relax and just be, I'm gonna say it, yourself.
this is the thing that
which is really cool.
Have been maybe recently realizing, is I remember when I had first seen Muay Thai ever, like had no idea what it was, and then saw it. I remember saying to you, we were in that like fitness place that we would go at. We would like drive out to this gym, and I was like doing one of the moves from the movie on you or something, like a jumping like monkey cracks.
This is a long time ago, right?
Long time ago.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to you, this is the first time I've seen a martial art where I'm like, I want my body to do that.
Right.
Like ballet or dance, where you're like, I want my body to be able to do that.
Right.
That's the whole fucking, if you reduced my entire Muay Thai struggle and experience down to one phrase, it's I want my body to do that. And my body doesn't do those things that I want it to do because my mind won't let it.
That is a story of liberation.
Yeah.
Because one, you are spontaneously attracted to something you're seeing, which to me means there's something about that is speaking to you.
Yes.
Like other people will look at it and be like, but you're like, no, that. To me, Karahat's fighting is kind of like that.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I want my body to do that, but my mind won't let me.
Yeah.
And you have progressed immensely, but still there is a struggle between how you want your body to go and what your mind will let you do.
Yeah.
And you still wrestle with that. That's why it's a story of liberation, because your mind is holding you back from what you want your body to do. And even to this day, where you're actually growing a lot and you're sparring so much, and we film your sparring, and during sparring, you have very powerful feelings of, oh my God, that was so awful because my body wasn't doing anything I wanted it to do.
Totally.
And then we'll watch the video because we record it, and you're like, my body was doing a whole lot more than I thought it was.
Or it looks very different from how it felt.
Yeah, but it's looking closer to what I would hope it would look like, right?
Yeah.
So your body is actually racing a little bit ahead of your mind. Your mind still is stuck on my body won't do what I want it to do. It's powerfully entrenched in that experience.
Yeah, I'm frowning and furrowing my brow, trying to think whether that's a consistent story to how I was as a kid. Like, was I trying to find a unity between my body and my mind
What will you do?
as a kid?
Like in soccer or something?
No.
I don't know about your childhood that much.
I can find consistencies because I can be like, I've never felt like I was very good at soccer.
Like violin.
Even then, like.
Do I go straight, baby?
Yeah, you go straight. I never wanted to be good at violin or like practice to be good at violin or anything.
What about skateboarding with your brothers?
No, that one was like a big tragedy because I did want to be good at skateboarding, but I wanted to just be good at it. Like I was too afraid to be bad at it first and like practice to be able to do any of the things. Like I was literally too afraid to get my feet off the board, which totally is like a heightened version of things that I struggle with now. But I'm trying to think of like a little kid, like a young girl who like is super insecure and wants a lot of attention becoming an actress, where you're like, that makes sense, where she gets to like try on all these other personalities all the time. Like it's basically playing dress up with.
So do you feel like there might be something there? Or are you not sure? You sound like you're.
Because I believe that there's a consistency. Like I'm not shocked that I became a fighter, although I am shocked that I became a like public figure to some degree. Like that part freaks me out. But
well, kind of. You would interview yourself. Like there's a part of you that is an extrovert.
With nobody actually asking me questions. Or
I'm saying there's a continuity. No, you don't agree. Okay, I think we covered that pretty good. Rolling? Okay. So maybe one.
I'm not good at introducing things, but
That's not true. You're very good. Talk about how we saw Selsing that
okay,
day.
I can introduce this by telling the story.
Yeah, tell the story.
So,
This is a good story.
So, to set the scene, Degradation Gym is run and headed by Ajahn Sarat, who's like one of the most feared trainers among amazing fighters, going so far back as like Karaha ran away from him after a single round on the pads when he was a little grommet or whatever. But you have to be tough to even be allowed to hang at Degradation as a Thai fighter. Like, there are peripheral people. But Sao Sing is the queen bee of female fighters. She's very tough and a kind of like validation of her heart, of how like intense and awesome she is that Ajahn Sarat loves her.
She's pretty much his daughter.
Yes.
Like a figurative daughter, right?
She started fighting, I think, on the Thai national team when she was 15 or 16, which is how she got involved with him, and he just like took her in.
Ajahn Sarat does not accept counterfeits.
No.
Like his whole thing
He's got
is
X-ray
finding
vision.
is what?
He's got X-ray vision.
He has X-ray vision. He has X-ray
He
vision.
sees you for 5 minutes and looks straight into your heart, and like a
Totally.
fucking like character in a fantasy. He's like, no,
Totally.
not that one.
Totally. So his love of her is like the stamp of gold.
Yes.
Like, this is 24 karat.
So we were there, and I think Sesing was on the Thai national team that year, and so she was training. The Thai national team has to go train with Ajahn Sarat, and they wait until the last second before they have to go and train with him because every day is so intense. And Sesing was on pads, and we knew of her before. We'd seen her, we were fans of her, we'd seen her fight, things like this. But she got on the pads and had go in here.
Okay.
Some of the pad men at Degradation are just very, what would you call it, mean?
It's
require
beyond. It's
a lot.
beyond mean.
They require a lot from you. They punish you a lot.
What is? Let's take a moment. Do I just go straight?
Go straight.
Let's take a moment and unpack this mean, because we've seen a lot of pad men in Thailand, and there's so many good ones.
Yeah.
Like, so many.
Yeah.
There's something about the pad men of Degradation. I've never seen that in any other gym. What is that thing? It's not mean. It's, oh man, what? It's like harsh.
Harsh is good because what they're trying to take from you is that, like, there are a lot of pad men who see where your line is and they put you on it and they'll push you.
But like cardio wise
but
or something.
No, they'll push you like in intensity to make you tougher. But when you start to break, they pull off a little bit to keep you from fully breaking. At Degradation, they're like, fucking break. Like,
well, not only that, when you're
and then get up.
when you're getting there to that point, they will physically abuse you.
Yeah.
Like, they will, like, when you're ready to break, they'll fucking sweep you.
Yeah.
Like, hard.
Like an opponent
Like
would.
when you're and you're going hard, you're giving your heart. It's not like you're weakening in your intensity of resolve, but he's like, when you're redlining, that's when they'll fucking like body shot you over and over again and then flip you onto the ground. And I don't know, there is something really unusual about their power. It's not just that they're mean or something like that. It's the kind of toughening that they are bringing out of you as a fighter. It is spiritual.
Yeah, I'll say that, like, for some of my years with Krunu, the like physical intensity of how hard he would make me work, I'm like, no opponent will ever get me there.
Yeah.
So it's like you've been higher than, like, you've been inflated, stretched farther than anyone will ever get you to that place again.
Yeah.
And so you're always kind of like under your limit, which is great.
Yeah.
They do that with like emotional.
Yeah, it would be
toughness.
like Pinu would do that to you, and then he would fucking flip you on the ground and he'd be like, get up.
Yeah.
Like, get up now.
Or not even tell you to get up.
Yeah, but you
don't
know you
up.
get up right
Yeah,
away.
totally.
It's like how fast you get up.
Totally.
And the fact that you've been knocked down does not mean that you made a mistake.
No.
Like, that's a thing in that gym, is that if you've been broken, it wasn't a mistake. The next moment is the one that matters, that you get up.
Yeah.
And it produces this metronome of intensity for you. Like, it's weird. As a fighter, you think, oh, if I land the strike, I did it right.
Right.
And, oh, if somebody lands on me, I did it wrong. And at Desharat, it's a different thing. It's like, you ignore what just happened, and then you do the next right thing.
It's as close to drowning as I think I've ever
Like
been.
Navy SEAL training.
Yeah. But so that's the background of what Desharat's like and the intensity that they pull from you. And this pad man that was doing pads with Sao Sing, and she was just kneeing. Like, she just had to keep kneeing
And
him.
being smacked, kind of.
But the thing is, he was fucking putting it on her. Like,
yeah.
not letting her, okay, that was a good knee, I'll stumble away and let you feel like I can breathe and come back. Like, she had to hit her red line and then push through it. Like, you have to break that sound barrier for your fucking engine to quit shaking.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, just stay in the sound barrier for a while. She was like...
It was knee.
And she was meeting that intensity to the point that Kevin and I just stopped and were like watching her.
Holy fuck.
But so what happened is the round ended because it does. Like, eventually it will end. There was a quote from a ultra runner that said it can't always get worse, which I think is that's the one thing about that kind of intensity in training, is that eventually it does have to end. You just don't get to pick it. When Sao Sing was done, she had to leave. Like, she got out of the ring and she disappeared for a long time.
She got out. I high-fived her, or I'm like DD.
I didn't interact with her at all.
The look on her face, like, what this topic is about is that place that she went to. Sorry, I had to get away from the truck.
Yeah.
Like, she performed so beautifully on the pads.
Gave everything.
It was, but not sloppy.
No.
Like fucking, like sharp like a razor too.
Like nobody could stand in front of that.
Ever. No female fighter ever could stand in front of that, and maybe not male fighters. Like, it was unbelievable. But what we're talking about is how that affected her when she came out of the ring. And you know this better than me, so talk about this, what we saw when she got out of that ring.
Well, there's this incredible thing where I talk about tiger energy, and I don't mean it in the lame Western beast mode. When I say tiger energy, when I say that Sagat is like being in a fucking cage with a tiger, or that you get into these states of tiger energy, I'm not talking about wow, that's so cool. There's nothing fucking cool about it. It is the threat of not death, but like shredded annihilation. It is like a shark is in your shark cage with you kind of thing. Like, it's not cool.
It's like, it's terror.
It's terror. It's horrifying. And there's standing near it, which is Sagat, and then there's being it, which is also horrible. And there's this kind of, it's become more classic of the like werewolf transformation scene of how painful it is.
It's become a little
It's like
bit.
they're trying to fight it, but they're also like in agony as this wolf is like coming out of orifices.
And the fucking like, bones are
cracking,
contorting,
breaking,
and it's very painful,
ripping, and all this stuff. Like,
and I think
you're not like, what a cool experience.
And like that's not something you want to happen to you. No. And then there was, I don't know what show that was, where he like eats his skin.
Sure, Hemlock Grove.
Where he eats the skin, and
the wolf eats the remainder of the person he was. Like, it eats the shedded, what do you call it when a snake sheds its skin?
Yeah, I guess.
It was like the skin was left over and the wolf ate it.
Yeah, and it was horrific in a way, and that image talked about the terror of that transformation, of becoming monstrous, kind of.
And so in talking about what Dejrod is trying to get out of you, what they're trying to make you, what you ultimately, if you pass, get to become, it's even in flashes. It's like for that fucking round.
Well, baby, I'll tell you, we've spent time at Dejrod.
And she had to like.
I've never seen another fighter get to that state.
No, or
like,
get near it even.
Even near it. He's making beautiful, aggressive fighters, but she has lived there. Like, that's her home, really, in a certain regard. Like, she's been trained there since she was young. She knows what Ajahn Sarat is about, and she just fucking went for it. But what was so amazing was when she came out of the ring, it was almost like the werewolf turns back into a person, and it's almost shameful.
Totally.
In a way.
And you're like,
I'm naked now, I have to go put my clothes on and be a human being.
Decompress.
Yes.
But it's not a like, let me calm down and catch my breath.
No.
It's this like, there's a weird degree of shame in it, of having gotten there.
Yes.
Like, it was required for the task, the way that like the Hulk has to become the Hulk.
Yeah, Hulk is a good example,
Thanos,
actually.
Or whatever,
yeah.
he's fucking enormous.
Yeah.
But he's not like, yay, I became the Hulk and saved the day. He's like ashamed of having gone to that point, even though it was what was required for that task.
So
for the greater good.
So I want to ask you, you know exactly what she felt like, because you yourself have felt it.
Not often, but yeah.
You have felt it.
I've been there.
You know what that is.
I've been there.
What role does that play in becoming the fighter you want to be? Like, do you actually just have to get comfortable being that uncomfortable?
No, you can't. There is no getting used to that. There is no like.
But there is avoiding it.
There is avoiding it, and I think a lot of people do avoid it because it's so uncomfortable and awful and shameful. But it's in small doses, and it's small doses because it's not even possible to get there often.
Well, maybe it is possible. Like when I was watching Wong Chinoy on the bag, he was teaching you how to work the bag in a way that's very different than how you learn to work the bag. And he's like, sabai, defense, and then when he's like, and then you go kill somebody. And when he went on the bag, like when he went to go do his 3 strikes, his face changed.
Totally.
Like,
it was like Jekyll and Hyde.
But this werewolf state, he goes right into it.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, a little tiny little spoon of, I can barely. He's like, no, then you go become a monster for 3 strikes, and then you're like, no, sabai. And now I'm a monster. I'm saying, for some fighters, not every style is like this. I think you have to make peace with that. Like, you can't, he turns it on like this, and then it's off. He's not ashamed of it afterwards.
No, he's not ashamed of it.
He's like, no, that's what it is. And even Hippie is, when he came to your gym, and we filmed that, and he's like, Sylvie, where's the violence? Where's the
kill shot?
Where's the kill shot? Where's the, like, boom? He means reaching that place. You seem like a little bit horrified by this. That's like...
Well, because what you're talking about, to people who have not watched it, like experienced it the way we saw Sao Sing get into it, or personally experienced it the way I have.
Right.
You are correct that like Wang Chinoy, when just training me casually, is like flip into it, flip out of it, flip into it, flip out of it.
Yeah.
That makes it sound like it's this like, I've made peace with it, it's this thing that I'm able to do, blah, blah, blah.
He is.
Yes, but it's also like how like a soldier who's actually seen war can like kill somebody and be like okay with it or something, like.
But you sound like
dark.
No, you don't. That's not what you should do.
No, those people can.
But they can.
They can,
but
because they've seen shit.
But that's part of Yod Moy.
Yes, but
turn right onto the ramp.
I think you're already on it. Okay, so the way Sao Sing had to go disappear for possibly the rest of training, as far as I remember it.
I think she came out in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
And then the times I've felt it, where it's like, I do not like going into that state. I don't want to be a tiger for very long.
Right.
The like shame, that's the like 1 foot in the door.
Okay.
It's like, I am this, I'm not this, I am this, I'm not this.
Right.
Versus people like Wang Chinoy, who's like, I'm this 4 times. Like,
4 times,
I
yeah.
slip into it when I need to, and I slip out of it when I don't need to.
Well, then let's go into superhero.
And isn't a villain.
Let's go into superhero analogy.
Okay.
Like, ideally, Banner could just become the Hulk,
Well,
and then go back to Banner and not be kind of like horrified.
he does in that fucking. That's my secret. I'm always angry. Is like he was able to like go into it on his at the right moment.
Yeah,
and,
but
like,
for
not
like a
cause great
15-minute
destruction and-
fight scene, but like Wang Chinoy turns it on for 3 strikes. He's like, and I'm gonna kill you.
The
and
thing
then,
that's so crazy about it, as someone who's experienced it, is that to even be able to conceive of controlling it,
yes, that's what
I'm like, that makes no sense.
that's the really interesting part. Because if you just release yourself to it and lose control, then you're really losing what Muay Thai is about. Because it's not about beast mode.
No.
It's like the honing of beast mode. That you could be a beast for 3 seconds and then look like a prince for 15 seconds. You look at me like I'm crazy,
No,
but it's true.
I agree with you. It's just insane to me that it's like,
Well, I think you have to train that. That's what,
of course.
ultimately, this is not something that comes natural to anybody.
But
You have to train it.
the thing is, like, when you first touch it,
Yeah.
like the Ajahn.
Yeah, totally.
So, Kevin and I watched this truly bad show that
Which
was so good.
Bad means good, yeah.
It was so good. It's on par with, like, Xena and Hercules with how bad it is, but it's called Legend of the Seeker, and it was bad, but it had really good writing elements. Like, that is such a cool idea. And there were these, like, dominatrix-y group of
Witches,
witches.
kind of, yeah.
But they carried like a billy club that was called an Ajahn. And this like cool thing about it is that like when you touch it, it just fills your body with pain. It's like an electric shock chair kind of thing. But
Well, it's a weapon that gives pain to people, like shocks people.
right. And then
But the secret of it is it's also shocking you.
it hurts them too, but they've gotten used to it. Like they've trained themselves to be able to wield this thing, and like the trick is not minding that it hurts, kind
Right.
of thing. Is
Lawrence
that like
of Arabia.
the feeling of getting into that state when you can't control it, when you're a civilian, like when you're just a baby learning to like feel these things. When you touch that fucking Ajahn, it's so horrible that willing yourself to touch it again, and to touch it on purpose, and to touch it longer, and then to hold it, to
Yeah.
like bash someone else with it.
Yeah. Baby, it's what the art form is really about. It's honestly what the art form is really about. You've found another way of dealing with this, in where you're like, you've discovered that in sparring and in fights, if you're slightly angry, you fight much better.
Oh, I do great when I'm slightly angry.
But that's your version of touching the thing. You're like, I'm just gonna touch it 5%.
Well, this is the crazy.
And harness the
this
energy,
is the crazy
though. You
thing
harness
too,
the energy.
Is that there are fighters who never enter that state or get close to it
Yes.
or even taste it, and you can be successful. Like
And yeah.
there are fighters. We watched one last night who basically just like talk over and overwhelm their opponent by like staying busy, which is they will never enter that state.
Yeah.
Like they're almost incapable of entering that state because you'd have no pressure coming back on you because you're just interrupting it all the time. Like the amount of vulnerability you have to have in order to get to that state. Like Saosing couldn't get to that state without the fucking harshness of those trainers.
We've never seen anything close to it in any of her fights.
Which is
if
frustrating.
if she fought like that, nobody could stand in front of her. Like it was one of the most unbelievable, the surreal things to have my eyes take in. And we've seen some really beautiful fucking Muay Thai in Thailand.
It is very much like comic book logic fallacy, where you have like Captain Marvel, who's more powerful than fucking anybody, but is actually like struggling in a fight with someone, where you're like, just do your fucking Captain Marvel thing. You have more power than the universe.
Yeah, totally.
And yet they're like blow for blow with somebody.
Totally.
We see Saosing and we're like, do the Tiger State thing. And just like, what do we call it? Blood bag popping?
Yeah.
Watching a show where this woman can like pop people. Like, just do that. Don't like mess around with this like pop, pop.
Yeah, but you can't get to that state.
Because she hasn't trained into it.
Well,
she can't control it.
She has trained it, but she doesn't train it in a fight context. And we're actually saying it's almost impossible to do so. Somehow these Golden Age fighters did do that.
Yeah.
Like, people think of the Golden Age as this like many people think of it as very violent because of the elbow war fight and da-da-da. It wasn't like that, but the high notes that he hit that were hit in the Golden Age was this tiger energy.
There's also
like it's very
people were
the
so
range
tough.
the range of emotion.
So tough.
Yeah.
Like having witnessed firsthand what the 50-year-old versions of these men feel like in front of me when they're totally controlling themselves to like show me something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, people stood in front of that where it was real, where they were actually trying to hurt each other and where they had 25-year-old, 23-year-old power. How the fuck did they stand in front of each other? It's like when you look at like Dark Ages torture, where you're like, how is that person not dead? Nobody would be able to handle that now. And they're like, another day on the wheel. Like, what the hell? People are so strong.
So let me ask you, because this is also something that has to do with yourself, is like, you know the feeling of shame, and when I'm like, you got to be able to go there for 3 seconds, and then 3 more seconds, and then 3 more seconds. How can you ever, as a normal mortal, living in 2020 and not 1990, how can you train that? More of it, like 1% more, like, and should one? Because it's not the same thing as like being angry and trying to smash someone's face. You know what I mean? It's not what the West thinks about.
Not only is it not like that, but my first instinct was to say, like, you tell me all the time with Yod Kun Pan, I'm improving really fast with Yod Kun Pan, and you're like, because you're getting better, you just have to keep putting your foot where the line is now to like keep that level of pressure. The first thought that came to mind is like, okay, you have to go against someone bigger than you who's gonna scare you or like can hurt you or whatever the thing is, to put yourself in that kind of like survival state. But that's not even right. Like, people will think of these like, I think Brazil is the kind of like gold standard for people sparring too hard, where they're like trying to knock each other out all the time. That's not it. That isn't it. Someone like trying to knock you out and hitting you too hard or being bigger than you, where you're like risking injury, that's not it. It's this weird.
Why
like,
is that not it? Because I agree with you.
It's like the soul stone. It's very like, it's not.
It's not what. It's very. Why is that not it? It's a very different thing than that. It's kind of like becoming possessed by an energy.
Yeah, and it's very hard to have people who can put you there.
Well, you have to eventually put yourself there, not have people do things to you.
Yeah, I don't even know how to do that. Like, we read about those monks who have to like spend a night in the graveyard because it's terrifying to like make their mind strong, or have to stay in the woods where there are tigers, or actually encounter a tiger. Like, all kinds of exercises where you're basically like flooding yourself with real terror,
and then being
becoming
at peace with it.
desensitized to it.
Yeah.
Is like, what puts you in a true state of terror is like a moving line, a moving target.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. You got tiger sakyants on your back. That's tiger energy.
Yeah.
Right? You've gone to Ajahn White Cruise ceremony and seen people
be possessed by
tiger energy, and in the sakyant world, when people are possessed by their tiger energy, they're kind of like out of control. Like, you're not really supposed to be possessed by it because it's dangerous.
Well, that's the crazy,
and it's like, it's too
like,
much.
Supernatural thing is that, like, if you're possessed by the energy, you become the tiger, which is an animal.
Yes.
It's having the power of the animal, but the power of a human psyche.
Yes.
At the same time.
Yes.
That's like supernatural.
Yes.
You're like witnessing a supernatural event when you see Wang Chinoy slip in and out of that, when Sagat is prowling around the ring, and you're like, he probably won't kill me.
You want to be invaded by the energy, but not possessed by it.
Yeah.
It's I hope people listening to this are not like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I hope they have some idea about what we're like. You know what I mean?
And we're not talking about comic books. We're talking about real people. Like,
real things.
Actually,
you can see it.
This happens.
We just saw it, Wang Chinoy on the back. Hopefully it comes through in the video a little bit. Because I was standing there, I'm like, it's kind of crazy.
Baby.
You said when he turned his fight face onto you.
You didn't see it because I looked at you. I glanced over at you, and the look on your face was like you did not see it.
No, I didn't see it.
And it's totally like, there's this thing that happens with ex-fighters, and they don't have to be like golden age fighters. Nook had it. Nook is this like crazy old man in Atlanta. His eyes would like glass over. It's that like doll's eyes shark thing, or like a cat when they're like go into predator mode, their eyes change or something. It's totally that. And Wang Chinoy was like, no, let me show you how to really step on something. And he like flashed into it for a second, and the fucking, as sure as I've ever been of anything in my life, like that gravity will catch me when I fall, I saw how horrid it would be to fight him, to stand in front of him.
Because of his facial expression or his whole body?
His eyes, it like, he changed into what he was when he's gonna come after you. And like, what you would have to be to face that, to stand in front of that and like counter it and oppose it.
But he is also very insistent that you do not stay in that state.
No.
You relax. You are fine. Everything is fine. And then you like show your fangs and become this tiger thing for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 7 seconds, and then you revert back.
But he kept talking about breathing.
Okay.
He's like, you go murder, and then you come back and breathe, and use your Jungwat and let them attack first, and then you go in and murder, and then you come back out. Him talking about breathing like that, 100% validates that it's the same tiger thing, and what I said where being at Deshrad is as close to drowning as I've ever felt in my life. He's like, you have to breathe, otherwise you're drowning. He's like, you can't stay in that state because you can't breathe in it. It's like you hold your breath.
You don't think he's holding his breath though?
No,
right.
But to be in that state is like going underwater. It's
emotionally,
like holding your breath. You're not Aquaman. So you fucking go under, and then you have to come up. like you're a whale or something, but like he's not talking about like hold your breath and jump in and be fearful because you have to come out for air. He's like, nobody can stay in that state for that long.
Well, not only can you not stay in it, he's like, you're not supposed to stay in it. It's animalistic to stay in it. It's not beautiful. It's not artful. It's not Muay Thai. Like to just, he would many times talk about like, bah, 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 like this rhythmless attack is not the art. It's like
also,
you have to become a werewolf and then a man and then a werewolf and then a man.
But
You don't just go full werewolf.
He was showing how that relentless thing is like meaningless.
It's meaningless.
And has no power to it. Like it's actually impotent. Which is what I was talking about these fighters who just interrupt. Like they cheat the system by just talking over all the time. They don't have to ever make a good point. They just talk over it. They will never get close to that state. Ever. Because it's like you have to learn how to dive deep. Instead you're going to be like a skipping stone, just keep moving over the surface the whole time. You will never understand that dive in.
That's a really good topic.
I'm all agitated.
Oh my god, do you want to pull over and we can do some vigorous shadow boxing? Just get it out. Okay, next topic. This might be our last topic. We might do another one then. See how we feel. We have an hour before we get home.
Wow.
Hour and 20 minutes actually.
I want more coffee.
Oh. Okay. Are we rolling?
We are rolling.
Well, you're leading the topic on
Oh. I don't even know what to call this or how to summarize it.
We'll
But
set the stage.
it's kind of about like being able to be aware of yourself and like feeling.
Well, let's set the stage. You're sparring a lot with
Okay,
Yoko
so I'm
Pan.
sparring every day with Yodkun Pan an hour, which is insane.
Who is Yoko Pan?
Yodkun Pan is the elbow hunter of 100 stitches. That's his alias. He's a fighter from the Golden Age. He was Lumpini and Rajadamnern champion, overlapping, which is crazy. Very few people hold belts at both stadia at the same time.
Especially in the Golden Age.
Especially in the Golden Age. He has a style that really no one else has. He's very well known for his elbows, as you can tell by his alias, but he also just had this like terrifying kind of relentless galloping style. He would just chase people across the ring and just like his kicks were like Dalsum from Street Fighter, the like go-go gadget leg, like they seem to just go, like stretch. He's incredible. He was one of the first people we put in the Muay Thai Library who I like, when working with him, like standing in front of him and he was teaching me, I could feel this like danger and threat and violence, even though everything he was doing was completely controlled.
Like emanating off of him.
Just like, he even gets this face when he like puts on his I'm gonna kick you. He completely controls everything, but it's like he puts his cloak of like murder on.
Well, we kind of, this goes right into our last topic a little bit.
Okay.
Right?
But the first time I worked with him, he was showing me this like stepping elbow. So he like steps to the side of the opponent and like throws this elbow at the same time. And it was in that session that I realized that the reason I could not do what he was doing was like a millimeter of space.
Oh, it felt that way.
And it was because I did not want to fill that space out of politeness, out of fear, out of like, I don't want to be that close to you, out of like all kinds of like, my control is to take distance instead of like, I can actually put the knife on your throat and not slit it. And in working with him for so long now, I have learned to take that millimeter. Like I eat that millimeter now. And the look on his face when I do that is he's afraid of his own, it's like his own knife.
His own
cut
technique.
off his throat or whatever.
His
it's
own
amazing.
technique, yeah.
But in in working with him, in sparring with him, there have been a number of these things that are actually completely different techniques and different postures and things like this, but it all comes down to that, like, it's a millimeter of difference that makes a huge difference.
And so you're talking about not a literal millimeter with a ruler, but rather almost an emotional millimeter.
It is physical, but the physical change makes this huge emotional difference. It's like a very relevant recent example is that he's actually naturally southpaw, and he just destroys me. He lands his left kick and left knee at will all the time. And the reason he can do it all the time is because I'm like hunching.
I don't know what you're doing.
In Thai we call it goom, to like crouch or hunch.
Yeah.
I like bend over a little bit and my ass goes back. Diesel Noi, when you're this close, can create space to land one of his long ass knees, because he can create space out of nothing, like just with these tiny little angles. This is the opposite, where you close space out of nowhere. Like you just eat the space like a black hole or something.
And it's not like I'm taking a giant step forward.
It's a millimeter. It's like, it's not even actual physical space changing. But if I stand up, like I take the hunch out, totally the same way where like you're sitting like this and people are like, I don't know, you just feel like I could walk all over you. And then you like just puff up a little bit and people are like, I don't want to fuck with that one. It's like that, except he literally can't kick me anymore.
Well,
by like
open the
standing up.
Unfold that a little bit. So you're like saying, while you're sparring in a like stance, a mixed stance where you feel like you're constantly being kicked, if you just stand up, you end his ability to kick you.
Yeah, and it's not.
What's that about?
What do you mean, what's it about?
Well, is it
like
a mind trick?
It's like a magic trick. It's partially a mind trick because he doesn't see the opening. It's like you just put invisibility powder.
So when you hunch over a little bit, his like targeting mechanism goes open.
It's like, I see that's open.
It's open.
When I clinch with people, because my magic is clinching. When I clinch with people will make these tiny mistakes where they float their elbow off of me. They don't make contact with their elbow on the front of the body. And it's like, I have a crowbar in the door. Like, you've left the crowbar in the door. If you just make that contact, there's nothing in the door. You can't open it.
No leverage, yeah.
People will like put their head down, but they put it down too far, and so you're like, now I can just crush you. Whereas like slightly up, just like how you lock into place, it's the same thing with like a fucking knockout hook versus not a knockout hook. Is like, did everything align into one piece? It's like tiny.
But this is a defensive thing where you erase the opening by simply standing up, posturing.
Yeah, but it's like that elbow on the chest thing where like I can see or even feel that it's not there, and I'm like, I've got your number. Like, you didn't close the door. There's no way
Well, I
I
actually
can
don't know
stay
what you're
out.
talking about, but
If they put it there, even if they're not putting pressure, I'm like, I'm locked out. So when he sees me, even if he's not like, she's hunching, like he's not putting into
and
words.
this isn't
like,
really extreme.
No.
It's not like you're like
Baby,
ridiculously.
a millimeter. I cannot emphasize this enough. Like if you're tracing an image and you go slightly outside the line, you're a tattoo artist and you blow your line out.
Yeah.
You don't have to go out like this. Like, you fucked it up. Like, it's just right. It's so small.
But you can. It's not so small that you cannot feel it.
I could not feel it until he told me what it was. He
What
was
did
like,
he say?
He was like, stop doing that.
Smack.
He was like, he told me, you were there actually, but you don't speak Thai. He's like, today, every time you put your ass back like that, I'm gonna knee you. Letting me know. It's like, every time you drop this hand, I'm gonna elbow you, kind of thing. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna not drop that hand. Sure enough, I started putting my ass back because I was getting tired, I was getting stressed, there was a lot of pressure. I'm trying to create this space that makes me feel safe. And that space that makes me feel safe like knee all day. And it's my open side. It's a horrible feeling.
So it feels safe, but it's actually not safe.
Exactly. You're like, I feel real safe looking down the barrel of the gun. You're like, just don't do that. Don't do that. But here's the thing. He gave me the secret. He told me what that was. And now that I know and I've felt it, I can kind of self-correct it. So there are times that either he's kicking me a bunch, or even I'm coming in and I can feel that he's like, the door's open. And I'll just straighten up a little bit. And it closes the door. Like, he doesn't have to say anything. I self-correct. And I'm like, all of a sudden there's no kicks. Like, none are coming at me.
Well, this is a huge, for everyone else, this is really the most important thing. It's one thing to know what you're supposed to do, but if you can't feel it and be able to self-correct it, you're not where you need to be.
Totally.
Like, just because you know your foot is supposed to go over there, if you can't feel the difference between doing it right and doing wrong, you're not where you can actually train your own self.
It's not even only being able to feel it, it's believing it too.
What do you mean by that?
I'm not going to name names, but we watched a fight last night with a fighter who, in their previous fight, fucking guard was incredible. Like, that guard worked, shut everything out, no fucking punches coming through, like, that is good. But the next fight, there was no guard. Every punch was landing because, while this person had trained keep the guard up, and maybe even felt keep the guard up, they did not believe in that guard. And so when the stress was there, even if you're like, I know I should put my hands up, I should posture up, posturing up should make this stop theoretically, you do not have the belief that's like, all I have to do is turn the lock on this door. So
where are you there where you're starting to believe it? Is that what you're saying?
In some things, and not consistently. Like, there are times that I'm like, I know how to fix this, and I like fix it, and then you'd come like, fuck, I can't kick you anymore.
That's
I can't do
so
this
weird. It sounds like a Jedi mind trick.
It does, but there is actually recently, and I don't know if it was because I'm getting these insane massages on my arms that Diesel Noy told me I had to get, and I thought I understood.
Talk about that.
I thought I understood what they were, but then I experienced the real thing and was like, oh, that's what pain is. Like, I thought I knew what pain was.
Totally.
I have no idea. But I think that the massages, while I ultimately totally need them and it needs to become consistent, they fucked up my power, which all massages do. Like, I never want to get a massage too close to a fight because there's a degree of tension in the coil that's good for me, that allows me to feel like,
oh yeah,
in control.
Yeah.
And if you get a massage, you like all of a sudden can't control yourself anymore.
Become like a marionette with loose string.
It's partially like that, but it was also this emotional mental thing where I was like, all I have to do is have a structure, like make a triangle so the bridge doesn't collapse. Like, I knew what I needed to do. I can do it with my arms, but I just didn't. It's like I was trying to make it out of cooked noodles or something. Like, it just wouldn't go.
Okay.
And it's what was missing was like an emotional thing. Like, I was emotionally weepy. And so, like, none of my...
Are you connecting this to belief?
That's the belief. The, like, I intellectually thought, just get your hands up and you can keep his punches off of you and you can keep his relentless attack off of you. All I have to do is make that triangle fucking structure and he'll stay off. But I was feeling all sorry for myself or something, and so it's not gonna stop, or like whatever the thing is, and so I couldn't actually put the power in the frame.
Okay.
So intellectually I understood to do it, but I didn't believe it enough. That's the millimeter. It's like you're a millimeter off and your whole house falls apart because the lines don't like create the power.
Okay. I'm a little bit... We took a long, wide loop on that.
This is why I don't introduce topics.
This is not an introduction. We're right in the middle of the topic right now. I'm not being critical. I'm like, how do we bring this in about this space? Okay, how about this? You said then this feeling that you've had about this millimeter helped you correct a totally different technique.
Totally.
With Andre.
Oh, yeah. So this, you get this feeling, I get this feeling. The reason I put my ass back and I hunch is not intellectual and it's not a belief. It's just I've worn this groove that's like, put your ass back to create a little bit of distance and it'll stop. Or like, you'll have a little bit of distance. It doesn't actually work, and somehow I really, really believe in it. The times that
it is a belief.
It is a belief, but it's wrong. Like, it's a belief in something false. Like, I believe that because all the lights turned green for me today on my way to work, that if I have the radio on 92.4, all the lights will be green.
Okay.
You believe that, but it's ridiculous. When I feel this, like, I'm getting hit, I'm getting tagged, and then I just go like this, and it stops, and you feel the power of that. Like, you feel the, like, structure has come, everything's locked into place. I used that same thing because I became aware of myself hunching when I was throwing these hooks with Andre, who just makes me throw hooks for like an hour. And I was struggling with them. They were really inconsistent. Some of them were powerful, but mostly they were like awkward and landing on different parts of his pad, and I felt like off balance. And I'm like, hey, when I'm like hunched over like this, when I'm coming after Yod Kunpan and it leaves me open, nothing's locked in. Like, it hasn't locked into place. It's like the tumblers haven't locked into place on a lock, so you can't open it. And I'm like, maybe I'll just not hunch and I'll throw my hook upright. And I did it. I like put my chest up and I threw it and it made it longer. And Andre was like, fuck. Like, that landed all locked in.
All the pieces lined up.
And I couldn't recreate it. It's not a magic trick.
Wait,
it's not
you
a little, like,
didn't
wand.
do it again?
I did do it again, but I didn't land with that much power again. I had more control each time. Like, okay, now these are more consistent. I was still hitting different parts of the pad a little bit. I couldn't keep my feet and my chest totally together. It's not a magic switch that, like, once I go like this, everything comes together. But it's like, once I go like that, I have more overall. It's like you can see the whole thing all of a sudden. It's like you push the dust off of the thing and now you can read the whole tomb or something, right? Like, get that out of the way and now you can read the whole thing. It doesn't mean you're in it. You've got the mummy now.
Okay, so what is your advice about millimeters?
The difficulty with this is that the meaning behind the millimeter is that you have to understand that the change might be so imperceptibly small. It's not like, I have to do this huge change in my whole posture and person and feeling in order to, like, make these things work. Like, when I'm throwing endless hooks with Andre and they're all inconsistent and they're landing on different parts of the pad and some are strong and some aren't, and sometimes my feet go and sometimes they don't, I'm like, there are 90 balls in the air and I kind of have no idea how to catch them. This is like putting a rubber band, like the millimeter is like putting a rubber band around them, where like now all of these lock into place and now you can just focus on the like 7 that you don't have control over.
Okay.
Is that people look for huge changes.
Okay.
Like, my hook sucks. Where is this huge change I need to make that work? I'm getting kicked endlessly on my open side. What is the huge change I need to make to stop doing that?
Get your block
That's
up,
like, I suck. I need to stop sucking, or like, I need to block all of them.
Yeah.
And it's literally that.
How can that? But most people have no access
to that. People won't believe that.
Yeah.
But the thing is that, like, one, in order to even identify that that's what you need to do, I had to have Yod Kunpan tell me the first time.
Yeah.
But then once I did it, I felt it, and I'm like, maybe I should go back to that thing he told me.
Well, you've done a Muay Thai a technique vlog on Roop, and we've talked about Roop in the podcast before. This is connected to Roop.
That is connected
It's
to
not
Roop.
like Roop is just a performance, but also it contains millimeters that will defend you and improve your technique. It's very weird.
And the effect of that millimeter being off, like, you'd think that it doesn't matter that much, but it's like shooting a gun at a target. If the wind is wrong, or like you're slightly misaligned, or you're like a pool cue that's slightly bent or some kind of thing, like the bullseye versus here, that's not a big difference. You don't make a huge adjustment on your targeting.
On your sight, yeah.
Right? It's like this tiny adjustment.
Yeah.
And you believe that tiny adjustment
will
get you to the bullseye. You're not like, spin the sight around and like, let's start over. You're like, it's like this tiny, like, see where it landed and then make this tiny slight adjustment.
Yeah.
Maybe your breath fucked it up, like, who knows? But like, even today, like with the elbows with Wanchanoi, where you're like, go through, like swing all the way through, the difference in my body and what I was actually doing was like, okay, just loosen up a little bit so that it goes all the way this way instead of like stopping it on the target. That's a tiny difference, and it's like, okay, just loosen that up a little bit. Tiny adjustment on my part.
Yeah.
The effect of that adjustment was him being like, no, versus like, fuck, that would knock somebody out.
Yeah,
like,
it was
the
massive.
effect was massive.
Yeah.
But the change was super small. And I'm lucky in that I've gotten so much experience and spent so much time making micro adjustments and being able to feel where everything is and the difference between that one and this one. I can't always identify what it is that I need to make the adjustment to in order to correct something. But I'm aware of tiny feelings. To be able to be like, okay, it's just that tiny, it's that tiny change right there. It's the standing up straight, or it's taking a slight step closer. Like, Wang Chunoi yelling at me about not stepping far enough.
Right.
That's not a millimeter. Like, that's like a foot.
But you know what?
Turn left.
One thing is that your foot is not stepping at all, and you think it is. But what he's saying is your chest comes.
Yes.
And that part is like a millimeter.
It's an emotional millimeter.
It's an emotional.
Honestly.
It's a thing where your chest has to be coming. Yeah, your foot has to come forward 6 inches, but the problem really isn't the foot. The problem is the chest and the head just having to come to want to travel through the space. That's the real difference that Wang Chunoi was talking about.
Totally. And it all comes down to
Turn left.
feeling, like being able to have awareness of that small of a change. Like, I don't think people who are unaware, who are just waiting for their coach to tell them what they did wrong, because they don't feel their way through any of their
Well, you have a technique vlog on
how to feel a kick.
and we want to do a part 2 of that. But that's a really good thing to look at in terms of what, if you guys are like, this sounds really interesting, but I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. That technique vlog, we'll link it in the description, is a really good starting point, because a lot of this has to do with just starting to feel where the parts of your body are. Because so many times you're trying to like be precise and correct errors, and you don't even know where where your hand is, where your foot is. Like what you're talking about this millimeter change is because you know where your posture is.
Yes.
So you can change it.
Yeah.
But that took many years. In the past, if you would just be like, stand up, you wouldn't know what the small change was.
Well,
that you would change it.
In the inner game of tennis, which I think I've recommended this book a gajillion times, fucking go read it. It's so good. In the inner game of tennis, he talks about how you can't give general advice that's like loosen up your grip on the handle, because some people don't need to loosen their grip. Like, they're already pretty loose. So like for them it's a tiny loosening, whereas for other people they're like white knuckling it, and it's like you need to really loosen up on that. You have to be aware of like where you're at, And I think what was so revolutionary for myself personally with that first session with Yod Kun Pan, in realizing that his elbow and my elbow were like a millimeter of difference, is that I suddenly became self-aware of my shying away. I became aware of my millimeter because I knew why I was doing it. I was like, I don't want to get that close to him. Like, I'm trying to be polite, or like, you can identify your millimeter by discomfort. Like, I feel this slight tension that's like, don't stand that close to me, or like, I don't want my hips to be that close to you because I'm trying to be modest or something.
Right.
You'll feel this discomfort that you're like, it's right there. Like, it's fucking right
and
there.
And that means you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable? Is that what you're saying?
Or you just have to dive into the discomfort. Like, be like, yeah, I'm gonna put my crotch on you. Like, it's just happening. Like, be a little bit bold. Today with Wang Choi, when he was telling me, he's like, you really have to step. He's like, just really, really step. I kept saying to him, I'm not brash. It's this word for like courage. I'm like, I'm not brash. I could feel that the reason I wasn't stepping was this like kind of.
What was the Thai word?
Gla. It means brave. Like, if it's in a name, it means brave. But it's this like brazenness that I was lacking, where I'm like, I'll politely dab my mouth instead of like opening your mouth and putting that fucking entire piece of cake in it or something. Like,
totally.
It's like that.
That's pretty good, baby. Thank you for being with us on our way from Bangkok to Pattaya. It actually feels like we took like the wrong turn or something. We like have been on the road forever.
We were duped by our map.
By Google Maps. If you are watching this on YouTube, even if you're a $1 patron supporter, you can get the audio subscription versions of all of the Muay Thai Bones podcasts. And even at the $1 level, you get access to some really insane Muay Thai Bones. Muay Thai Library content, the Wang Choi thing.
The two that we talked about today.
Will be up soon. But at $5 and $10, at $10, it's insane.
You get the whole library.
You get the whole library, over 100 hours, plus all kinds of other stuff. And you support the Muay Thai Bones podcast and all the interviews we're doing and articles you've written. So consider becoming a patron. And if you're listening to this on audio, as a patron, thank you for supporting us. Everything you do,
literally
everything is through the support of patrons and your official sponsors, but really the patrons. You're fighting your journalism, like all the documentary stuff. Like, it's kind of, when it's all over, what you've have done will be like legendary.
Oh, it's pretty cool already.
Yeah, but
I'm really stoked because since COVID, a lot of people have like turned to the internet because their gyms are closed, or because they just kind of have way more like time to get into online access. The number of people who are like, I am learning so much from the library, or like, I have been supplementing with the library, or all of these things, like, people actually are using it for what it's...
Well, they're using it even more, and they were already using it, but I feel like they're digging into it more. The resource level on it is off the charts.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to just skim through stuff, totally can do it. But if you want to deep dive and binge watch stuff, feel like you're in Thailand with legends, with fucking geniuses of Muay Thai, it's incredible. And then you can rewatch stuff, like not even the first time, third time. There are people that watch sessions 5, 6, 7 times.
Yeah.
So thank you for supporting the Muay Thai Bones and everything that Sylvie's doing. What else? Signing off? I don't know. I hope we do more of these. I keep saying it, but
thank you to our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsors, who are
Low Blow, which you absolutely should get. I actually just did a review. They have the original AeroSlim for female groin guards, and they just came out with the free. And I did a review between the two of them that will be up.
And Onyx MMA has supported you for a long
in
time.
Singapore has been my sponsor forever. They are amazing. You should follow them on Facebook because they're hilarious. Also, so even if you're not training there, if you want to support them because they support me, that's great. But you also get their very funny content.
They have awesome.
They're very funny.
Yeah. All right. So signing off. Cue music.
Dun, 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 dun.